All right, good evening. Today we're learning the second half of Dalet Amud Beis. We're at the Mishnah, at the first of the long lines, and Amir Hashem will be learning till the bottom of Hey Amud Beis. Not a very long blot. Definitely not going to be taking all of our typical 45 minutes. So if you were davening at the 9:30, you'll have a couple of extra luxurious minutes. So the Mishnah opens like this: Hamakif es chavero mishalosh ruchosa. Let's say I have a field, and you own properties on three sides of my field. The gadar es harishona v'sashniya v'sashlishis, and what you do is you build your own fences and your own fields. Derech agav, you've now surrounded my field on three sides with your walls. I didn't pay for them. I didn't ask for them. You happen to own the three fields around me. You wanted to build fences. Mazel tov, go build fences. That's not my problem. So you built fences, but now your walls that are really for your yard function as a three-sided fence for my property. So the halacha is ein mechayev oso. The Tanna Kama writes that you who built your fences cannot be mechayev me to pay. You weren't building your walls for me. You're building your walls for you. It just happened to be that they doubled as a wall for me. So the Tanna Kama holds that you are not allowed to be mechayev me, the property in the middle, to pay for those walls.
It's not my land either, though, right?
It's on your land. If I'm the man in the middle, you're building only on your land. 100%. Correct. Rabbi Yossi Omer, and it's very hard to understand this machlokas. We'll see a whole host of different versions of this. Rabbi Yossi Omer, im omad v'gadar saravis, if he, and we don't know who the he is, if he got up and he made the fourth fence, megalgalin alav esakol. Now, me, the guy in the middle, now I'm obligated to split the cost on all four walls. Very difficult shita. We don't even know what that means. Who is the he? Is it the same guy who built the other three? So let's say the Promans, they own the four properties around me. So they built three, and then if they built the fourth, now I'm chayav. Why does that make sense? So we'll have to see exactly what that means. Let us start with the Gemara. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel halacha ka Rabbi Yossi. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi. The Amar, he's of the opinion im amad v'gadar saravis megal galin olav esakol. And then says the Gemara the following. And yes, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon. However, lo shna amad nikaf, lo shna amad makif. We don't care who builds the fourth wall. No nafkamina. If you, Rabbi Proman, build that fourth wall, I'm chayav to pay for half of all four walls. And if I, as the owner of the middle property, get up and build the fourth wall, same thing happens. It triggers the fact that I now need to pay for half of all of the walls. Fascinating thing. The Gemara now says, 2/3 of the way down, 5-6 lines into the wide lines, Itmar, Machlokas Samurai. When I become chayav to pay for the walls, for my half of the walls at least. Look, the Promans are study people. They build their walls out of solid gold. All of a sudden, I get this huge bill for 50% of 4 walls of solid gold. That's what Rav Huna holds. I'm just at his beck and wishes of however much he paid. Chia Barav Amar no, Hakol Lafi. Can't do that. Whatever the cheapest I can find at Home Depot is what I will pay, and no more. And if you wanted to spend more on your walls, that's not my problem. If you're wealthy and I'm poor, why is it fair that I should have to pay such a high standard? Now we have to analyze. Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, Hamakiv es chavero mishalosh ruchos. So this is our Mishnah. So let's say the Promans build on their 3 properties that surround my 1 property. So now there's 3 walls around me. The halacha is ein mechayev, and also like we saw in the Tanna Kama, that when he builds his 3 walls, he cannot yet charge me for half of those 3 walls. What's the diuk from the Tanna Kama? The diuk from the Tanna Kama is ha revis mechayev oso. That's very reasonable diuk. And now when we look back at the sheet of the Tanna Kama in our Mishnah, it makes no sense at all. All it says is that we're not chayev on the 3 walls. But what's the tushtel from there? It's this. It's Rabbi Yossi. The diuk is Rabbi Yossi. Amos Sefer, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Amad v'gadar saravis megalgal and alav sakol. What is the machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi? I would have assumed, and I did assume this when I learned it, that the diuk of the Tanna Kama is Rabbi Yossi. The Tanna Kama held that if you build 3 walls around me, ein mechayev oso. What's implied? That if you build 4 walls around me, I'd have to pay. And then Rabbi Yossi says, if you build the 4th wall, you have to pay. So what's the machlokas? They actually seem to agree. So now let's come back to this machlokas we just saw between Rav Huna, who says I have to pay 50% of whatever product he's chosen, versus the sheet of Chia Barav, who said I have to pay whatever the least expensive type of wall is. Bishlam other Rav Huna, I understand according to the sheet of Rav Huna, To Amar Akolafima Shigadar, but I have to pay 50% of whatever material is used by the people who live around me. Then I could understand the machlokas Tanakama Rabbi Yossi as follows. Tanakama Sabra Kolafima Lafid May Kanim Bizol. The Tanakama was of the opinion that we only have to pay for the cheapest in. Umash Gadar low. However, the actual cost of what was spent, that I am not on the hook for. Just whatever the cheapest wall is, that's what I'm obligated to pay. Rabbi Yossi Sabar Kolafi Mashagadar. I understand, says the Gemara, according to Rav Huna, I understand how there's a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. Got it, clear. But there's a problem, because I don't understand according to the other shita. We're 3/4 of the way down, halfway through the wide lines. According to the shita of Chia Barav, that the cheapest version of a wall can be paid for, then my Ika Bain Tanakama Rabbi Yossi. Then there's no difference at all between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, and it makes their machlokas difficult to understand. If according to the Tanakama, there's no chiyuv to pay even the cheapest wall, then my kayayvle, then what's he giving him at all? There's no way to understand the Tanakama within the shita of Chia Barav, who says that when the problems build around me, I'm only obligated to pay the cheapest version of a wall. Kasha. So the Gemara provides 3 answers as to what the machlokas could be according to Chia Barav. And let's go through all 3 of those answers. 10 lines from the bottom. The difference could be however much it costs to provide a shmira for the property. Tanakama Savar. The Tanakama was of the opinion Agar Natira in to make Kanim Bizolo. Tanakama holds that what we're paying, you're right, we're not paying the wall, because Chia Barav says you're not going to be, the Tanakama wouldn't have to pay that. But what you are paying is the cost of having a low level of security. Rabbi Yossi Sabar to make Kanim Bizol. No, within the camp of Chia Barav, you'd have to pay for the cheapest version of the wall. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2. How do we understand the machlokas Tanakama Rabbi Yossi according to Chia Barav? By Seima. Now the first 3 walls is the machlokas between them. Let's talk it out. If the problem is built around me in 3 walls, and then I build the 4th, why do I have to pay for the first 3 walls? That's not fair. Before the 4th wall was built, nobody said boo to me about his 3 walls. Now the 4th wall is built, and we're megalgal on me all of the extra. Why is that reasonable? He built the walls on his own. It's nothing to do with me. I didn't ask him to build it, it didn't help me. I don't want them. So it says the Gemara, Tanakama Sava, Revi Hu the Yoivle, Aval Rishon Shnia V'Shlishis Lo Yoivle. According to the Tanakama, when that 4th wall is built, I only have to pay for half of the 4th wall, not half of all 4 walls. Because when the first 3 walls were built, if he would have stopped there, I would have been off scot-free. I don't have to pay anything. So the Tanakama held that even when the 4th wall is built, I'm only obligated to pay half of the 4th wall, and not the first 3 walls. However, Rabbi Yossi Sava, Rishon Shnia V'Shlishis Nami Yoivle. According to Rabbi Yossi, I would have to pay half of all 4 walls. Massive difference. It's a 4x difference. It's a very, very big difference. So we have to make sure that we know how we hold. So within Chia Barav, this is answer number 2. That there's a difference between who built the 4th wall. The Tanakama, really just Tanakama without the Dalet. Tanakama Savar, Taima the Amad Nikaf. I, who was surrounded, I got up and I built the 4th wall. Then Dimigalgal and Alevis Hakol, because now I'm showing that I'm interested in being sealed in. And now I'm showing an interest. If he built all 3 walls and I'm like, this is working out really nicely for me, all I have to do is build the 4th. So the Gemara says that's a Megalgal. That's a Gilui Das on me that I want those walls up. When I build the 4th, it shows I wanted the other 3. Aval Amad Makif, if the Romans get up and do it, that's Tanakama. For Rabbi Yossi Savar, Loshna Nikaf, Loshna Makif, Im Amad Begadar, no matter who builds the 4th wall, Megalgal and Alavis Hakol. Well, this is a little bit more of a difficult lumdus to understand. Why would it be that if he builds the 4th wall, that I'm on the hook? I never asked for this. Okay, we're not learning Rishonim now, but if we were learning Rishonim, we would stop and say, wait, this sheet is complicated. I did not lift a finger. I never asked for it. I never said anything about it. I never said thank you. I didn't write a thank you note. Nothing. Yet Rabbi Yossi holds, I'm chayiv, I'm on the hook for 50% of all the walls that he built. That needs to be answered by the Rishonim. It's a good kasha. Or the Gemara should bring it up, but it doesn't. Lishna Achrina. Another possible explanation of the Makif Nikaf answer. So that was our 3rd answer within Chia Barav. Here's version 2 of that 3rd answer. Lishna Achrina Makif Nikaf Yikabenar. The Tanakama Savar. In Godar Makif Es Ravius Nami Yoivle. Rabbi Yossi Savar, So let's go through these two answers. Tanakama holds that im gadar makif, if the promens add the fourth wall, then I only pay the fourth. Rabbi Yossi says, if I get up and build the fourth wall, but if the promens add it, then I don't have to pay anything. See, this second version makes a lot of sense, and maybe that's why it was brought, because the second version says that within the Rabbi Yossi camp, if the promens add the fourth wall, it's not fair. I didn't do anything. The second version says no problem. You're right. The Kareshes are exempt. You didn't do anything. But the first version of Rabbi Yossi was not like that. Let's turn to the top of Hey Amar Aleph to get to today's daf. It's not a very long blot. In Rabbi Resnick land, I think this was a 9.5 minute blot, give or take, which is very fun to listen to at 2x. I didn't understand one word he said, but it was fun to listen to in 2x because it took 4.5 minutes to go through the daf. Didn't understand one thing. Let's tell a story. The Gemara says on the top of Hey Amar Aleph, Runya akfe Ravina me'arba ruchosa. So Runya was surrounded by Ravina on all four sides. So how do we hold? What did we say? We said we hold like Rabbi Yossi. So if we hold like Rabbi Yossi and you look in our Mishnah, that means Megalgal and Olavis Akol. That means that Karesh who lives in the middle, Runya who lives in the middle, he has to pay. So Amar Le Ravina says to Runya, Havli Kama de Gadri. You need to pay me money. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah. Lo Yaivle. So Runya didn't want to pay. Havli lefi kadam bizol. Okay, you're not going to pay me 50% of my gold walls. At least pay me whatever the cheapest wall is at Home Depot. And Lo Yaivle, he didn't do that. Havli agar netirusa. At least give me some basic costs for shmira over the property. And Lo Yaivle. So then Ravina got a little clever. Yom Echad, Ravina noticed Hava Kagadre. He saw that Runya was harvesting his dekel tree was harvesting dates from a palm tree. Amar Leila Arise, and Ravina said to his sharecropper, I have a great way to show that Runya actually likes the walls that I built. And once we can show that he likes the walls that I built, I can be megalgalat in the cost of all the walls. Says the Gemara, Zil shkol mine kibura de ahini. Go take from him a cluster of dates. Now, they weren't Ravina's to take. Ravina was just trying to irk the guy and show him that the walls were actually helpful. So Azala Asuye, he did this, and Rama Bekala, Runya raised his voice. What are you doing? Get away from here. So Amalei Ravina is like, I caught you. Galis daitach de menach nichalach. Now I know you like the walls. You owe me money. And Ravina continues, Lo yehei ela iza ba'alma mi lo bayni tirusa. Well, you don't benefit from walls. It stops goats from walking in. It stops sheep from walking in. It stops everything from walking in. Pashut, you're benefiting from the walls. And obviously, there's a gilui das. If you're upset that I can walk into your field and take stuff, you're obviously happy that there's walls there. Amar le, Runya pushes back and says, Iza be'alma lav le'achlu yebaya. When the goats come in, they don't eat the dates. So it's not the same thing. The gate, I'm not really so happy with the gates. Amarle, below Gabra, Bais de Michlela. What about people like me? I just walked into your property. I went through the door in the wall and I took your stuff. The Haraya, that you obviously care about the wall. So now they had a machlokas between them. And what is, again, we don't have time for this, like for an actual conversation here, but just Rosh Prakim. The conversation was, I didn't ask you to build the wall. There's an element of benefit that I have, but I didn't ask for it. Who is on the hook for paying for that wall? Is it just a builder on the outside four properties, Ravina? Or is it even Runya in the middle? Asa l'kamei derava. So they went and asked a Shiloh. This is what people should do. When you didn't have machlokos, they should go to a Rav. Says the Gemara. Amar le. Rava says to Runya, Zil paise b'maydi ifayis. You should go pay him in any way that you want to appease him. Meaning pay him one of the different, very interesting answer also. Why is that an answer? Tell him what to pay. Is he paying like Rav Huna, that I have to pay the gold? Is he paying like Chiya Barav, which is just the cheapest version of a wall at Home Depot? We don't know what the Gemara is like weird about it. The Ilo says, Rav, if you don't pay him in one of these forms, I'm going to paskin on you like Rav Huna, aliba de Rav Yossi, that you need to pay 50% of the gold wall that the Perlmans built. Okay, all of that is sugya number one, and that's a sample of the fact that we paskin like Rav Yossi, although a bit of a quirk as to whether or not we hold like Rav Huna or Chiya Barav about paying half of a gold wall or just paying the minimal cost of a wall. That part seems a little unclear from the Gemara. A third of the way down on Hamid out, the Gemara says, Runya Zavan Ara a mitzvah de Ravina. This piece of property that Runya had, he sold it and he sold it to somebody else. Now we have a din, it's halacha l'maisa today, called bar metzora. If I'm selling my property, I have a Yiddish neighbor, Scotty Sher lives next to me. If I am selling my property, I need to give first right of refusal to Scotty. Scotty says, look, thank you so much. I'm not looking to buy a second house. No problem, then I put it on the market. But the din is that I'm supposed to give it to that first person. Runya didn't do that. So that's what the Gemara says. And what he wanted to do, Sava Ravina Lesluke Mishum Dina de Bar Metzora. He wanted to take the property away from him because Runya did something wrong. You're from a Yid. You can't do that. You have to be able to sell the properties within accordance of Jewish law. And there's a din of Bar Metzora. Now, the underpinning of Bar Metzora is based on a pasuk of Ve'asisa HaYosher Ve'atov. That's the right thing to do. On my block, it's happening right now that someone's going to soon be moving off of our block, and they're taka selling to their neighbor. That's the din of Bar Metzora. That's a mitzvah daraisa. Or it's avoiding an isser daraisa, whatever the actual din is. So here, Ravina was upset, but it's based on Ve'asisa HaYosher Ve'atov. Then they went to go talk to Rav Safra. I should say Ravina went to go talk to Rav Safra. Amalei Rav Safra beit to Rav Yevel Ravina. Amre inshi arba'a litzala, arba'a litzlala. I'm going to tell you right now on this page are 5 different explanations of this, 3 in Rashi, 2 in the Bava Tosfos, and I'm just going to share with you just one of them, and I'm going to say what the words mean, and we're not going to talk about it deeply because we're not looking through all of these, but it's kind of like a colloquialism of the day, and it is 4 for the hides and 4 for the tanner. It was basically a way of saying that this guy really doesn't have anything other than this. Ayin Sham is a very lengthy Rashi, an uncharacteristically long Rashi. You can see on the right side here, which starts a third of the way down and ends 3/4 of the way down. Dibra Maschel Arba Letzala Vidal Letzala Ani Shamate. You can see there's a whole arichus here toward the end. Vali Nira Dal Letzal Dal Kikoros is talking about. These are all mashalim, but it's all basically to say that Ravina was poor. And what he was saying is that something here is happening that's different. When you have the justice scale, and on one side you have the din of bar metzora, which is that you really should sell the property to your neighbor because v'asisa yashar ve'atov. But sometimes that v'asisa yashar ve'atov is offset by another v'asisa yashar ve'atov, which is that the guy is poor. Let him sell to whoever he wants. He's going to make more money from the other guy. Let it go. Let it go. So here, this is why we have to know halacha. Sometimes we'd say, no, state in halacha bar metzora. No, you have to be able to balance it out. It's not just bar metzora all the way to the nth degree. There's another v'asisa yashar ve'atov that it has to weigh it out. So sometimes and this is why being a posek when you're not a Talmud Chacham is a big problem. Oh, you heard a din. You're like, I heard a din from a Rav. And no, until you've learned the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch and the Shach and the Taz and the Pri Megadim and all the Meforshim, you're not Ma'aretz D'Oraisa. You're a dangerous person. When I was in Smicha, one of my rabbis say this all the time. The worst person to put in a kitchen is someone who's in Smicha. Worst person. They know all the chumras, all the kulas. They're going to trafe up their kitchen. Let your wife pass all the shilas or call and ask. Because in seminary, they learned all the basic psukim and they got it down. But the worst person in a kitchen is someone who thinks they know what's going on, which is everyone in smicha. But everyone was getting things wrong all the time. I trafed up my kitchen 100 times. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what's going on. I call my Rebbe. He's like, you need to do Haggalah on your whole kitchen. It's like pre-Pesach in the middle of November. You trafed everything up. This is the same thing here. We need to understand the underpinnings of halacha before we can paskin. That brings us to a new Mishnah on Ham and Aleph, a little bit more than halfway down. Kosel chotzer shenafal, a wall falls down. Mechayven oso livnoso ad arba amos. If our wall falls down, I can work with you to rebuild that wall. I can be mechayev you to build the wall, but only up to daled amos, which is about 6 feet. That's how tall. Bechezkas, and when this happens, there's a halachic chazaka that because 4 amos is a typical amount, is a minimal amount that I am obligated to you as your partner. So then there's a chazaka shenasan that I actually paid for this already. Ad sheyavi raya shelo nasan. So what's the starting assumption of payment? The starting assumption of payment is that I paid you. Okay. Now midalat amos ulamala. Let's say that you are my neighbor. You are not satisfied. You're taller than 6 feet. You're 7 feet tall. You don't want a 6-foot wall. You don't want dalat amos because you can see over the wall. I can see you. You want more privacy. You want to build a 6-amma wall. That's up to you. But you can't be mechayev me in that. You can only be mechayev me in dalat amos. Dalat amos ulamalan, above dalat amos, ain mechayev also. That you can be mechayev me up to 4. Let's say it's $10 a foot, and we're splitting. I owe you $20 because it's 4 amos. But if it's 6 amos, then you need to pay the extra $20 to get to the 6 amos. However, if you see in my behavior that I actually would enjoy your 6-foot wall, because what did I do? Samach lo kosel acher. Let's say you build a 6-foot wall. I paid you for half of the 40. That's my din. I gave you $20, $10 per amma. You built 6, and then I'm like, once they're building 6, I think I'm gonna build 6 and build a little roof in my yard. Okay, so you build your wall right here, 6 amos, and I decide to build a 6 amma wall. Everyone's like, okay, now you've showed your cards. Now we know that you like this 6-foot wall. But so therefore, samach lo kos al acher. Even if you don't make a roof over it, why? Because I showed that I really am enjoying your 6-foot wall, and now I made a 6-foot wall to align with your 6-foot wall. So then I have to pay you another 10 to get to half of 60, which is 30. What's the chazaka over here? Well, because it's abnormal to be mechayiv someone to build a wall above Dalet Amos, therefore, then the assumption of whether or not I paid is that I didn't pay. That's the standing assumption because it's uncommon for someone to build a wall of that height. Let us start the Gemara. The Gemara says 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Reish Lakish, hakovea zman chavero. Let's say you and I make a time by which I ask you to pay. Please pay me tomorrow, July 1st by noon. I want you to pay me by 12 o'clock. So hakovei zman chavero v'amar lo, and I claim to you praticha b'soch zmani, I paid you within the time frame, namely between now and tomorrow at noon. Eino ne'eman. It's very fascinating halacha. You're not ne'eman to say you paid prior to that time. Ulavai she'ipar b'zmano. The Gemara has a little bit of like an elbow jab, like, yeah, if only people would pay on time, it would be really nice. Very unique piece of Gemara itself. Not for now. The Gemara says, Abai v'Rava damer tarvayo. No, I disagree with you. So Abai and Rava argue with Reish Lakish. They say, damer tarvayo, avid inishta para bigos zimne. It's typical for a person to pay within the time of the due date. Pashut, that happens all the time. Why do Abai v'Rava say this? Because zimne dimisramu lezuze. Sometimes you have a little snowfall. You get a little bit of extra cash. I got a check in the mail from my son's wisdom teeth for $1,300 2 weeks ago. Pasha couldn't tell you why they gave us. I have no idea what happened. We didn't pay for it. It was all insurance. We didn't pay a dime. Check shows up out of the blue. So I might take that money and pay off some of them. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll pay the gardener. I'll pay Makoro the money that I owe them. So Amar, what's the svara when you have extra cash on hand? So I'm going to go. What? It was an overage. They sent it to me as overage. I asked my wife, I'm like, did you put this on a credit card? She's like, I don't think so. Really?
Yeah.
Hope
6 months later, Dr. Stein sends you a bill.
What?
From the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah. Oh, you're one of those kind of Jews. All right. A little Ovi, Doni, a little bit of a.
In fact, much of the Bava Basra.
Yeah, I will, because by that point, I think I'll have a $1,300 hole in my bank account, probably. So sometimes if you have a windfall of money, so Omar, I'm going to go and pay the guy. I don't have to worry about it. I fell into a little bit of cash. So that's what the Gemara says. That's why that is what the Gemara says as a svara for the sheet of Abai v'Rava. 2 questions on this. Number 1, top of Hammond Bays. We're going to the second to last line of this page, and then we will stop for the day. Tanan. The Mishnah writes, we said, in a case where the wall falls down, and I'm on the hook to pay for 50% of a 4 amma wall, what was the chazaka? The chazaka was that I already paid you. We don't assume that I didn't pay, because it's like pashut. It's like it's obvious. When I go out to meal sometimes with one of my siblings, we both hand in the credit card, and the server swipes the 2 cards. It's pashut. It's ABCs. They don't even think about it. It's just it just happens. Like there's not a dialogue. It just happens. The wall falls down. Pashut. Between okay, I'll pay half. You pay half. It's obvious. But says the Gemara, hey chitami, what are the dynamics when we say that there's a chazaka that I've already paid my half? Ilema de amar le praticha bizmani. If the claim is to say I paid in the right time, pshita, that should be obvious because bechezka shenasan, and therefore, what do we see? We see that that the chazaka, that's too obvious. That can't be the case. That is pariticha bizmani. Elalab, the case where there is a chazaka must be the Omar le praticha b'soch zmani, which is Abai v'Rava. So that's a kasha against Reish Lakish, who says that we don't assume someone paid in that earlier time. So therefore, Kashem says the Gemara, no shiny hacha the kol shafa v'shafa zimnehu. Says the Gemara, when you're building a wall, every layer of bricks is a time at which you should pay because the other guy's laying out money. So again, with the promens, if our wall falls down, we have it's a 4 amma wall, and every row is 1 amma. He's laying bricks already. He's got a worker laying bricks, but you laid out the money. So I already owe you money. I'm not within the time. I'm not paying early. You've already spent money. I owe you money already. So that's not considered early, and therefore you can't bring a raya from here. And Tashma, let's try again. Becheskas, we said at the end of our Mishnah that in a case where you wanted to build a 6-amma wall, now, I'm not chayiv on a 6-amma wall. You wanted to do that. So by the 6-amma wall, for that extra 2 amos that I have to pay half for to get from 5 and 6, I don't have to pay anything for that, actually, says the Gemara. So that's becheskas shelo nosanat shebi raya shenosan. There we assume that no money was given in that case. Hey chidami. If you want to say that I paid within the time frame on my low, why would that not work? That should work out perfectly fine to say that I paid because I owe you money and I'm trying to pay. It must be that the chiddush of the case is in our Mishnah. This is a raya for Reish Lakish that a person does not typically pay doesn't typically pay early. It says the Gemara, shiny hacha. That case is different. The Amar mi yemar de machayvu li rabbanon. Who says that the rabbis are going to obligate me to pay the extra part of the wall? That was what was going on in our Mishnah, where he built 6, and then the Gemara says that. Just look back at the language in the Mishnah. It says that if in fact I built a wall that was 6 to match up with your 6, and we said now I'm obligated, the money that I owe you then is bechazaka, that I did not pay you until there's a raya. So the Gemara says that the rabbis might not necessarily say that I owe the extra $10 for the extra 2 amos. How do we paskin in this case? Do we paskin like Reish Lakish, who says, as we can look back on the bottom of Hamid Aleph, do we paskin like Reish Lakish, who says Eino ne'eman in the case of praticha b'soch zmani, or do we paskin like Abai v'Rava? Rav Papa v'Rav Huna b'Red Rav Yoshua avde ke'Abai v'Rava. They paskin that there is such a thing. We do assume that a person will pay within the time frame. Mar Baravashi avad kireish lakish v'hilchasa kireish lakish. We hold like Reish Lakish. Pretty rare. This is what the Gemara says. This is quoted in Shulchan Aruch as well. And here's the big chiddush of the Gemara today, and we'll close with this nakuda. Ve'afilu miyasme. This is true even in regards to a yaso. What does this mean? V'afal gav de amar mar. If someone's going to be taking money from Yisomim, perhaps we should say that it's always with a Shavua. We typically assume that because we want to be as sensitive to Yisomim as we possibly can. Chazaka lo avid inish te para begozimne. And it says the Gemara, we have a chazaka like Reish Lakish, that we assume that they didn't pay. And I don't have to make a Shavua that they owe me money because we have a halachic chazaka that they didn't pay. So says the Gemara, which is a raya, very strong raya that we hold like Reish Lakish. We'll stop right here at Ibayaluhu, and in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow night we'll pick up with Daf Vav. Wishing you all a beautiful night.